Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, I'm Karin.
I'm Kaity.
I'm Ann.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club.
Woo!
Woo!
I was going to say I'm Kaity.
You can say that if you want.
We all want to be Kaity.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to say that.
I don't want to be Kaity sometimes. How's everybody doing? Happy, what month is this?
April.
Thank you.
This is your month.
Oh yeah, it is my month.
Does it feel like it's been a long time since your birthday and it was just a couple weeks ago?
Yes and no, because I'm like, isn't it May yet? Like, I feel like this month is going by like really slow, but also it was just my birthday, so I don't know what day. I don't even know what day of the week it is. Well, what are we talking about today? Karin, this was your book.
Yeah, our book. This was our. I picked a book by Celeste Ng, called "Our Missing Hearts," and yeah, there's a lot in that book.
Yeah,
tell us about it. What is it about?
Oh yeah, hold on.
Yeah, it was. I guess we could start with like our initial reactions, like we usually do, right? Like,
yeah, I think I'm supposed to give like a synopsis.
Synopsis. Well, we could talk about what we're working on while you bring.
Oh
that up.
yeah,
what are you working on, Kaity?
Yeah,
I am crocheting a sweater. The pattern is called Far Away. Thank you. It's like a granny stripe kind of pullover. Well, it's not really. The yoke is like a color work crochet yoke, and then the body is all in granny stitch, and it uses 1, 2, 3, 4 colors, and it is very quick. I am zooming right along. I'm all the way in the body, got a couple inches to go, and then I'm going to do a little more color work at the bottom. What are you working on?
The name of it was top of mind because the crocheters were buzzing.
Oh, good.
So I was showing it off on your behalf.
It's a fun pattern.
It's cute. I want to make her other sweater. It's like
Granny Go Round.
Yeah,
me too.
That one's super cute.
Yeah, this is the designer's Iron Lamb, and she is British, so this pattern is in UK terms.
Ruh-roh.
So I'm hoping that somebody translates it, or maybe I will translate it, because it's probably just like a find and replace on Google to replace the terms. But yeah, it's easy and fun.
Okay.
I am making a sweater that is a direct reaction to the bummer that I found this book to be.
Yeah.
I use my little Centro knitting machine to make a sweater in panels, but I'll talk more about that process when we talk about projects on a regular podcast. But my colors are neon pink, neon yellow, and then like to soften the blow of those visually, there's a deep dark maroon wine color, and then a really rich saturated gray. It's not a charcoal gray, it's like a dark,
like almost like a slate.
Yeah, slate. That's a
great word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
You needed some bright, fun colors.
This was a heavy book.
Yeah. What are you working on, Karin?
I'm working on coasters because it's nice and light and easy. It's just a few rows with a little. You stack them up together and you put them in a little crochet pot, and they look like a succulent,
cute,
a potted succulent.
Adorable.
I'm gonna make another one that's looks like a potted flower, little pot of flowers. So, it's just nice to have a simple,
nice,
comforting project.
Yeah, that's like satisfying. You get some action.
I needed some satisfaction.
Yeah.
I mean, so not that I wasn't satisfied with the book, but we'll get into that. So I'm going to go over the synopsis. This book is about 12-year-old Bird, like Bird Gardner. He lives a quiet existence with his loving but broken father, a former linguist who now shelves books at a university library. Bird knows not to ask too many questions, stand out too much, or stray too far. For a decade, their lives have been governed by laws written to preserve American culture, that's in quotation marks, in the wake of years of economic instability and violence. To keep the peace and restore prosperity, the authorities are now allowed to relocate children of dissidents, especially those of Asian origin, and libraries have been forced to remove books seen as unpatriotic, including the work of Bird's mother, Margaret, a Chinese-American poet who left the family when he was 9 years old. Bird has grown up disavowing his mother in her poems. He doesn't know her work or what happened to her, and he knows he shouldn't wonder, But when he receives a mysterious letter containing only a cryptic drawing, he is pulled into a quest to find her. His journey will take him back to the many folk tales she poured into his head as a child, through the ranks of an underground network of librarians, into the lives of the children who have been taken, and finally to New York City, where a new act of defiance may be the beginning of much-needed change. This is very dystopian, and just a quick, I'm not going to say, how did you like it? I'm just going to say, how'd you feel about it? Because it's not really a book that you like.
I liked the book. I thought it was
shocked. I thought for sure you were going to hate it.
No, I thought it was well written. I think it was poignant, and it was scary and
terrifying. Yeah.
No, I think I enjoyed listening to it. I was compelled to finish it. Yeah, I enjoyed it as much as you could enjoy something with heavy subject matter like this, I guess.
I was extremely affected by it.
Yeah.
It is all those things you said. Beautifully written, well performed. Except Lucy Liu does say library, right?
Oh, I don't know. I was listening at 1.5 speed.
I was
so
listening at 1.4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Library.
She says library.
Yeah.
All the time.
Lucy
and it's
Liu.
a book that's set in library.
All about libraries. Library, yeah.
There's 2 R's in that word.
As opposed to sherbet.
Oh, we're not going to there today. We've covered the sherbet.
You were right. That you should run with that one anytime I bring it up. It's your victory.
So this was the same author of Little Fires Everywhere, which I could have sworn we all read, but maybe we talked about it and I jumped on it and I read it before I watched the Netflix show. And then I read it. I loved her as an author and I wanted to read more from her because her style of writing is very gripping. She takes these connections between mothers and their children, and the hard parts that happen. And there's a lot that you don't, like, we come in, I think, I should say I guess I'm sharing how I felt about it. I had a hard time getting through the first part of it. It was so heavy and I was just so torn, and I had to stop a few times because I got very emotional. It was really, really hard. It's a little too, it's scary because I'm seeing what is happening in our world, which will lead into our questions soon. And it was just, it was kind of frightening in a way that, you know, how Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale is also kind of this could happen.
Yeah.
And we're not that far from it, kind of scary.
Yeah.
This book is very Handmaid's Tale. I got 1984. I got Fahrenheit 451. We got the Patriot Act. If we're going to talk about written word.
Yeah.
There was another one in there too.
Yeah. It's scary how it's near future, like that it takes place. I couldn't tell if it was like current day or just like a reimagining.
It's a parallel to us now.
I don't think it's the future, but
I was trying to figure that out. You're indicating
I'm going to ask our first question because we're right on to it.
Mm-hmm.
So this novel takes place in a world that isn't exactly our world, but it isn't not ours either. Writes N. Ing in their author's note. What elements of the novel's setting align with your understanding and experience of the events of the 21st century thus far? How close do you think we are to a society like that described in the novel?
It's easy to think like, well, this would never happen, right? Because like, I can't imagine that this would happen. But at the same time,
that's what you're reassuring yourself.
Yeah, because at the same time, not at this scale, but terrible things happen, you know, in American history that we want to forget, right? And if we don't remember them, we're going to do them again. So it's, like you said, it's easy to cope and be like, well, it's not going to happen, but it's reasonable to believe that you could see this devolving in the way. So
that's what what's her name again?
Margaret Atwood?
No. What is our main character? Our main
Oh,
Margaret.
Margaret.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so that
yeah,
is
she is
what
Margaret.
she says the whole time when we finally get her point of view.
Mhm.
Is she's like, oh, it can't, whatever, it doesn't affect me. I have this happy, wonderful little life.
Yeah.
Which is what I cocoon myself every day, that I
Uh-huh.
choose not to listen to the news because it makes my mind race and my heart race and
Yeah.
tiny strokes every time I listen to the news. Like, we're all guilty of that.
Yeah, it's easy to clock out.
Comfort yourself, keep yourself insulated until you can't anymore.
Yeah.
This, I think, is a parallel timeline from 2008 going forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that she is an adult in 2008, Margaret is.
Yeah.
I think that she's probably kind of maybe close to my age, because they mention the toys she played with as a kid.
Mhm.
So when they're talking about how her parents try to keep her like grounded in the society around them.
Yeah.
They talk about Cabbage Patch dolls and some other toys.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, then she's my age.
Uh-huh.
If she's somewhere between Katie and I, maybe.
Mhm, mhm.
Cabbage Patch dolls came out the Christmas I was 5.
Yeah.
And so that like stood out to me right away, that this is a parallel to our time going forward from 2008, that's the crisis that they're talking about.
Uh-huh.
That they're describing the New York point of view of, what was that called? The camp out on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember.
I don't remember the name.
Look at us. Look at us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a pretty big deal when it was happening. And it happened all over the country. And they were villainized. Whether or not they were good or bad, they were definitely villainized. People participating in that movement.
Yeah.
Look at it. I'm going to look at it.
We're just like the kids in the cabin.
Yeah.
Burning the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was one of all the things that were disturbing. That was upsetting to me, that there they had this primary resource
Yeah.
of the truth.
Of the history of what happened.
And, because children don't have that forethought, and
Yeah.
we need it now, we're going to burn it in the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do to, like, move on with your life, right? They needed it to stay warm and to have something to do, to focus on. Like, it's easy to forget about all of the horrible things that happen and like you said, cocoon yourself in your happy little bubble and pretend like it's not happening, because sometimes you, like, physically need to be able to move on, right?
Yep.
Well, I see the scary part. One of the scary things is I see things that are happening like now,
Yeah.
paralleling those kind of things. Like when they're a lot of their talk about trying to find a scapegoat is exactly what was happening in Nazi Germany. There was economic distress. They didn't want to blame somebody. They blamed the Jews. They blamed something else. And I see her parents trying to help her fit in with everything, to make her into the model minority for her own safety, as a safety measure.
Mm-hmm.
The more you fit in, the more this duck your head, don't
Yeah.
look, even his father, who was not Asian, did that at the pizza parlor. We're just I'm doing what I can as a parent to help protect you.
The nail that sticks out gets the hammer, right?
I mean, even the PACT, which stands for, what does PACT stand for? I remember it's
Protecting American
culture and traditions, which I think that's kind of what there's trying to happen. I mean, forget about free speech when, like in Tennessee, they just kicked,
the rule of law was not
they just kicked people out, and intentionally in those groups they kicked out.
They used the
legislators.
rule of organization to. I didn't know exactly what happened, but I was learning a little bit more of it. That they expelled them because they weren't following Robert's rules or something. Like they weren't following the rules of the meeting.
Decorum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But when decorum is more important than children's lives, I mean,
yeah, and you could draw a lot of comparisons to things that happen right now, like in North Carolina, I think it is. They're cutting libraries out of their state budget as a proposal.
Oh,
so like the literal banning of both books in Florida or full libraries in North Carolina. I think it's North Carolina. Like, that's happening right now.
Yeah. From what I read from that was they were at first trying to ban just a few, books, and people are like, no, you can't do that. And they're like, fine, we will cut funding to all of that. Well, nobody gets
this
books.
Is all so
which
dangerous.
Is like,
it's
so
like no
scary.
one really should be in charge of this and
They're
banning any books and saying
right.
because so one of the things I heard on I think it was the congressional floor, I caught a snippet of a representative saying the role of public education is to like give children a global view outside their homes.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other side that's saying, schools shouldn't be allowed to dictate what children are exposed to. That's the parent's point of view.
Yeah.
So like on one side of that, you think, I'm going to give you this viewpoint because you should have a full line of sight of the history of something.
Sure.
But that schools can't be trusted to do that. So the schools are saying that's what I want to do, and that's why you shouldn't ban books. But then in this storytelling, schools and all of the legit places are just perpetuating the lie of omission again and again. So it's like, it's so dangerous to put anybody in charge of that. You can't only let what children learn at home be the thing they're exposed to. But you can't trust
the school to do
schools and the public indoctrination to do that either. You can't trust anyone.
No. A sort of positive-ish parallel I can draw is like the whole point of this book is anchored in libraries, right? So it's this interconnected network of librarians that are like doing the work to find this, to like build this network of lost children and connect them with their parents.
Society of Librarians.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I think it's either the New York Public Library or the Brooklyn Public Library, I can't remember which, is providing free access to their entire library for children in states where books are banned. So if you are a teenager or a child in, let's say, Florida, and you can't access, all of the books that you should, I think it's the Brooklyn Public Library is providing that access digitally. So, that's the librarians doing the work to fill in the gaps, right?
What happens when it comes to a truth like this? And because it's in the Patriot Act. Like, the Patriot Act was something that made me feel like the most like a huge betrayal of me as a citizen.
Yeah.
That this got signed into law with no voters
influence. Yeah.
And so that's been in the Patriot Act since 2001, that any library, they can pull your library records and find out every book you ever pulled.
Right.
So in a digital world, how much easier is that?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you trace down the kids who are trying to learn about themselves or trying to relate better to others. And then what happens to them?
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrifying.
And I like that she raised the stakes. I mean, I hated every minute of this book, but I think it was very artful that she raised the stakes, that at some point you can't be blamed for what your children do.
Yeah.
Right.
We've all done something that violated our parents' core beliefs.
Yeah.
To what point of view, I can't speak for anyone else. And my son recently did something that violated my core, and it was very public. But I have to stand with him. And anyone who knows about what it is going to think that behavior of me.
Yeah.
And I have to be held account to it.
Yeah.
Even though it's 180 degrees of my core and what I've been trying to bring him up to, I have to stand and be held account with him. So I should lose him? That's what this book shows.
Right.
Your child goes out and makes a choice, or you've made a choice.
Yeah.
And you must be set asunder.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
But it's very artful that she raised that stake. It's a parenting, constant anxiety of my child's out in the world. I'm out in the world. Am I going to be safe to get back to them?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to do all right in the world and be safe in their choices out in the world?
But I mean, I'm not a parent, but I assume that you don't assume that the things that you do and believe are going to lead to are going to affect your child in that way, right?
No.
Like you have your core beliefs and your values
Yeah.
that you teach your children and you do your best to instill in them, that can be the reason why, you know, something terrible happens, like your whole family explodes, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
A marriage wrecked.
Yeah.
A child's, you know, severed from his mother.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, this was definitely a hard book, for sure.
Can I get a couple more questions in? Okay. The connection between literature and protest is very powerful in this novel, from the proliferation and censorship of Margaret's poetry, which totally got taken off by someone else who didn't understand. Her poetry was nothing but what she wrote while she was pregnant with her child, you know, and then someone else decided to redefine what her poetry meant. And anyone who didn't like her because she was Asian decided to also reinvent the meaning of her work. But it goes from the censorship of her poetry to the network of librarians you were talking about caring for the relocation. Why do you think this form of communication is so resilient against forces and events as big as crisis and pact? How does it inspire individuals and groups in the novel to act, or even how does proliferation and censorship cause us to act, even?
I would argue that the point of poetry and music and art like that, and art in general, is up to interpretation. You put it out in the world with your intent, but not everybody's going to take that intent from it. They're going to see what they want to. They're going to hear what they want to. They're going to read into it what they want to. So I don't necessarily think that her poem was misconstrued. I don't think it was outside of the scope of what she intended to translate in that poem. It was taken and used as like the battle cry for this movement, which she probably didn't want to be associated with. So for that, sure. But I would argue against the fact that she's totally against, that it doesn't represent what she stands for, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think she knew what she stood for when she wrote it, or at the beginning of this whole tragedy, right? But
that's true, because she wouldn't have evolved to this other person if that wasn't a part of her.
She wasn't out there protesting from day one. She was doing what she could to survive, or she was hunkering down with her family and doing what she had to get by from day to day and pretending like it didn't affect them, right? But yeah, I think one of the reasons why the use of the library or the written word or whatever was effective is because it's really easy to hide things in a sea of letters and books and words,
quite literally, right? Little pieces of paper with meaning.
Like, it's a pretty untraceable way to send information in a network that's all integrated with each other, that is sending people books and resources back and forth all the time anyway, right?
Well, like she sent a message in a book in the form of a picture. How he was able to go from that picture to the little parts of it to extract meaning.
Yeah, that was in the mail.
Yeah, but it connected him to the book.
Which
sent him to the library. Yeah,
and got him to the Duchess's address.
Yeah,
which that was all very interesting. Mm-hmm. Like I think the events of the novel were very interesting. As you know, you might be getting to this, but the tension of what is she working on was very intense. Because you see it so often that whatever she was wiring, you think is going to become violence.
Yeah,
because that's
I was
where,
worried they were going to be little tiny bombs.
Yeah, like a dream deferred. Does it rot and fester, or does it explode, or however that line goes?
Right. I'm glad it was non-violent, but I was afraid it was not. It was going to be violent.
Well, she teased us that we as the readers could hold on to the hope she falsely promised Bird as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have another question. So, both Bird and Sadie struggle with missing parents, yet their approach to seeking a deeper understanding of their past is vastly different. What about their personalities guide the respective strategies, and why do you think their friendship is so strong?
Well, they balance each other. They have a common connection.
Yeah, they
like
can
being
relate to
separate.
each other. I think a lot of children that probably were around them and at school were trained as they were to not talk to and to not stand out and to not bring anything up and stuff like that. So I think when Bird found somebody who was willing to talk about things like that, he was able to start connecting to the fact that it's like, oh, you know what? You're right. This is bad. And I would like to know what happened to my mom, instead of just following his dad's rules and going from point A to point B. Don't defer from your route. Don't talk to strangers. Don't stand out. Which as his parent, like, I can imagine that's exactly what I would tell my child to do, because it's got to be terrifying to think that you are so close to having your child taken away like that. Like, the connection between him and Margaret, as much as he can say, I don't know this woman, I don't talk to him anymore, like, that it's like a hair's width away from that happening to him, right? So I think as soon as Bird found somebody that was like, this is a bad thing we should talk about, he was like, maybe you're right, maybe I should think about this.
Yeah.
I think Sadie's approach is greatly influenced by the fact that while Bird had his dad, Sadie had no one. And she was bounced from home to home, and her parents, I think, they didn't necessarily shield her from what they were doing.
No.
So she came up, she had a very strong sense of right and wrong, and I'm not going to, and non-compliance. I don't know that Bird would have ever been like a Sadie, because I don't think it's in his personality to be non-compliant. He's kind of pushing the boundaries because of his strong need to connect with his mother, which I got the sense that he was stronger, more connected to his mother than to his father.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of natural. Dad goes off to work, mom stays home. Like,
Yeah, Dad's a boring guy, he does his job, he comes home, they have a predictable
he reads
life.
the dictionary.
Yeah, like,
which is sweet.
I kinda
It's
love,
sweet and endearing.
but also you can hear.
I mean, we all
Can you hear the inner groan when he goes on to another etymology lesson, and Bird's like inside going, not again. Talking about moms, let's talk for a moment about Margaret's transformation when she becomes a mother. How is she able to adapt to so many different circumstances, from her rebellious and resourceful youth to the comfort of her life with Ethan, too many THs, to the purpose driving her life in Survivor when she goes into hiding. I really felt strongly how she was so driven that she almost didn't notice her circumstances, that she's not sleeping on even a mattress on the floor hardly, and that she's going without food because she's not even thinking about food. She's just thinking about this thing she has to do. That she forgets even how to be a mom because she's only been by herself and driven by this thing for 3 years.
I think it's longer than that. Oh no, maybe it is 3 years. It's a quarter of his life, right?
Yep. Yeah. What about Bird's existence makes her willing to sacrifice it all for the children she tries to honor in her final act?
Because even though she forgets how to care for him, she's never not a mother.
Yeah.
She doesn't forget that she does care for him.
Yeah.
And I can't, I'm sure that's the reason why this is so important, is because she knows what it's like to have her child apart from her. And as if it were somebody who, doesn't have a child at all, or has a child and they're totally fine and nothing bad has happened to them, like, what drive would that person have to do anything to try and correct this situation, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just trying to survive.
Yep.
Like, I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm going to keep going, doing what I do. It's really easy to do because it happens all the time. You're like, that's sad for those people, but I can't do anything about it. Like, what power do I have to do that thing, right? But she has, I think this is a interesting point in the book too, is that idea of her responsibility to do something, is that even though she didn't intend for this to be her, it sort of is put on her as her responsibility to do something, because it is her words that were taken to represent this thing. And I think it's the same reason why I think anybody with a platform has a responsibility to say things when things happen.
Yeah, I've really evolved on that.
I have too, because I'm like, you can say what you want to say or don't. It's your platform.
Yeah.
You do whatever you
Yeah.
want. But I do think that the responsibility is there, whether you intended to have it or not.
Yep.
I think it's just, I think
Isn't
it has
like
become...
That, it's like that song, saying nothing is still saying something.
Yeah, it's...
I used to think, like, you're just a singer, you're just an actor, you're just a
Yeah.
whatever. But you're not.
you
You're a
have
human
people
being.
who listen
you're a
to you.
citizen, and you have the ears. You've endeared yourself to whomever for whatever reason.
And if you don't want to be that voice, you can use that platform to lift other people's voices.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's her responsibility to be the one to start something to happen.
I
you know?
was thinking about rewatching True Blood, and then I went down the rabbit hole of like, oh, how are Anna Paquin and what's his face doing? They're still happily married and they've had twins. It's great. I love poking into celebrities' lives until I remember like why is this accessible to me?
Yeah,
and then I feel bad. Anyway, so I was looking at her Instagram. That is exactly what she does. She is all about like pointing to like there's very few personal posts, which can't falter with a mother of young children.
Yep.
And they're either about whatever artistic venture she's doing, or she's lifting up other authors, other creators, and then giving them a platform. And I was like very impressed.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought, I feel like what really drove her purpose was when she went to meet with the parents.
Yeah.
Of the gal who
The 19-year-old girl.
Marie.
The 19-year-old Marie.
Yeah.
And because
their hostility towards her rubbed me wrong, though.
Oh, I think it was totally...
grief.
No, I think it was completely justifiable. If I were in their position, I would be like the dad. I'd be like, why are you here? Like, I don't want to talk to you. You know, I don't have any responsibility to make you feel better.
Yeah.
That I get, actually.
Yeah.
They have no responsibility to make anybody feel better.
Yeah.
So maybe it's an amplification of everybody like taking their daughter, because the part where the mom and dad are like nobody really knew her, and she's become this symbol. So I guess there probably would meet anyone with hostility.
Yeah,
I feel like they feel like their daughter has been misaligned, and by the media and misjudged.
Not misaligned, but malappropriated. Like taken from being their daughter to being a symbol.
Yeah.
And they didn't really know her, and I feel like they're not trusting because of her, because she if Margaret comes and they don't know her. They don't know that she's not going to try to use their daughter's memory.
Yeah.
But she becomes a good listener. I think the father felt a lot stronger about that than the mother. And Maria's mom was just grateful to be able to voice the person that they knew their daughter to be.
Yeah.
And the father came around. At first, you know, and I like that Margaret gave them all the time that they need, those several days to be able to walk through. It's part of the grieving and being able to voice and trying to talk about. They had this inside and no one was listening to them when they're saying, no, this was who our daughter was. And they got to get a voice and they got to share and that I think was what started to drive her to tell other people's stories.
Yeah.
And to, you know,
it becomes her whole mission.
Because whether that child gets reconnected or not, which is since they move them from state to state.
I don't think the librarians were really, they're never gonna be in each other's lives again, but they could keep tabs on where, or just know they're okay. Like the parents were only ever gonna get a speck.
Yeah.
Which a speck is something, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's, I think that action of listening and listening to those parents is what changed her as a mother to, like, you're right. That's what became her mission.
Yeah.
Like, she wasn't sure how, but she was going to make a voice for these parents and be able to give I don't know where I'm going with that. So anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's what gives her a purpose. Because at that point, when you have left your family for their own safety and have run away, like what the hell is she going to do?
Yeah.
Where's she going to go? What's she going to do with the rest of her life?
So, I'll have 2 more questions.
Yeah.
One of these is because libraries have are very near and dear to me. I as a person whose upbringing was always chaos, I loved libraries because they were a quiet, calm place to be. I could be there for hours and no one questioned me.
You're like Matilda.
I love libraries. Not all libraries are great. Some were not comfortable. And I've noticed that the feeling of libraries changed as you get more digital. And I still have a soft spot for card stacks.
That was a good scene.
Yeah, those are all books.
Showing a stranger in a foreign land. You know?
Yeah.
So what is the special allure of the stacks in the university library for Bird and for Ethan? Do all libraries carry the same quality of discovery and comfort? I don't think so. Have you been to a library that held that mix of dust and leather and melted vanilla ice cream, warm like the scent of someone's skin? I wouldn't say it was vanilla ice cream, but there is something about, I've got, I can think of 2 libraries that, they're old libraries that had, back when I was a kid and a young adult. I remember my college library was one of those old ones with arches and lots of wood. So I always associate that dust and wood and paper smell. And you could go way back deep into the stacks where the lighting wasn't great, but you're surrounded by all these potential stories.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I always had a warm, comfy place for it. Especially they had the long, big wood tables. When they changed to little short computer stacks, it's not the same to me in the modern libraries, but I'm told that there's other libraries that are historical. I feel like I would get that sense from one that was in an old historical building.
I've been to Trinity College Library in Dublin, which is like 1,000 years old, right? Like older than anything in America. And it feels like a completely magical place, like Harry Potter. Like it looks like that it's old and musty and dusty, but it's also like extremely beautiful because like the care and detail that goes into preserving a place like that is incredible. But like, the idea of the allure of the library is like, that's where all of the history is. That's where the information is. That's where you go in whatever form, like that's where the important things are, right? And in the digital world, you could get all that online. But then there's, the Library of Congress, has that's where our history lies, right? So if you need to find something like Bird to go and have this vague memory of a story and be like, can you help me find this random thing? Mm-hmm. That's what the librarian's there for. I like the idea that, I always thought it would be really fun to be a librarian.
Oh, I think it would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a degree.
It's a lot of school to be a librarian.
Yeah, it's almost as much schooling as to be a lawyer or a doctor. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly how
That's why I'm not a librarian.
Yeah. Exactly.
And thoughts?
I like libraries too.
Okay.
But I'm a bad library citizen. I can't be trusted with taking books out.
I have only really connected with the one library in Fillmore that I went to as a child.
Yeah.
And I had we did the summer reading program and you got to earn prizes and stuff. So I always loved going to the library. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't go for years and years until I was an adult and I was like, I want a library card again. And I went in and it was exactly the same as I remembered when I was a little kid. And it was very comforting. I enjoy when I do go there, but as an adult in the 21st century, I don't have an excuse to visit the library very often.
Yeah.
I like the Oxnard Public Library.
That's when I do go is with the kids because they love the books, right?
Because my dad took us every, whatever the length of rental time. I think it was 2 and then it changed to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I would take my stack of books and voraciously read them and then we would take them back. But on my own, I am a bad library citizen.
Well, I love that at the Oxnard Public Library, I can check out up to 50 books.
Yeah, that's bad.
And I can't be trusted with 50 books.
Nope.
I've come close to that when the kids were little, because you had a whole month
Yeah, it's bad recipe.
But then I realized, okay, we're not getting through all these books in a month. I don't need to do 50 just because I can.
Just because you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they have a nice kid section where the kids can sit on on kid-size beanbag type chairs, and they have a place to tell stories, and their books stay organized in a really good way. So, okay. So, last question. Which form of storytelling resonated with you most in the novel or in life in general, written or oral? How are they each used in ways to preserve the truth of lived experience when history or other dominant powers try to erase them, such as the missing children and Margaret herself?
I think oral storytelling is always going to be more compelling to me because you get the intonation and the emphasis and however somebody wants to be. Like, if you hand me a stack of stories, like if let's say Margaret released a book under a pseudonym, it was all of these people's stories. It was like a free zine or something that got distributed, or pamphlet or something. Like, that's far less compelling, I think, than her voice over 1,000 million, 2,000 tiny speakers, right? Which is another reason why I enjoy audiobooks too, is because I enjoy somebody telling me a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love a good story. Audibly.
I like them both,
Yeah.
Like, I like to immerse in my own little brain. Like, I heard someone phrase reading as, like, sheets of dead trees and staring at ink on them and hallucinating for half an hour or whatever.
Yeah, which is very fun to do.
Essentially what reading is.
Yeah.
And, but I also love being read to. My mom did a lot of that, and that once I got that's what audiobooks were, like, the whole world of reading and storytelling and enjoying an author's way of crafting a story. Because, like, yeah, we could listen to podcasts or we could watch movies, but there's something special about the author crafting a complete tale.
I always enjoy when I can find an audiobook that's narrated by the author.
Yeah.
I always think that's so much better than a celebrity or just an audiobook reader, right?
I have mixed feelings.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like Bill Bryson as a reader.
It depends on the author.
Yeah, some of them are great. Some of them are
some of them
boring.
are better authors than they are. Storytellers.
I will say Lucy Liu was not great. Like, I found her to be very whispery, breathy at points.
I can't give it a fair answer because I read it. I listened to it at an
I went like
speed.
1.5 speed, which normally is way too fast, but this was like totally fine. And then I slowed it down near the end, which is I usually do because it's like if I'm at the climax, I have time, I'm going to slow it down just so I make sure I don't miss anything. And I was like, oh my God, we are going so slow.
No. I couldn't do it in this one because I just needed this book to be done.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is,
I don't think I would have
fair to the author.
No,
but this was a very traumatic book for me.
But I don't think I would have been able. I'm always complaining that books are too slow. I don't think that this one was, but one of the reviews that I saw over and over is that people thought that it was. Well, I'm like, I listened to it like way sped up, so maybe that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. It does.
But it doesn't always for me because I've also listened to other books that at that same speed and been real bored.
I think the events of this novel were riveting.
Yes.
So I listened to this twice. Mm-hmm. I listened to it right away when we first picked it at regular speed. And you're right. It is really quiet. It didn't feel long, but it just felt quiet. And there are parts that I think I missed because when it's too quiet, my brain checks out a little bit. And I had to go back and multiple times and stop and re-listen. But then just today, I listened to the whole thing at 1.5 speed because I had a long day.
Yeah.
And the whole tone of it was much easier to get through because I got through it quicker.
Sure.
Interesting.
If you were struggling at 1.5, it would have been very, very hard at just regular 1 speed. I think, also her voice was a little easier to listen. It wasn't that it was hard. There's no shade on Lucy Liu, but it just at the quicker speed. You're right. I actually stopped. It didn't sound like they were like chipmunking their way through it. it had a little more attention, a little more
I think you
emphasis.
would have enjoyed Grapes of Wrath much better if you'd sped it up faster.
I think I was at like 1.25 at least.
No, that's even at 1.5. That book's long. I liked it, but okay.
It's long, yes.
So yeah, I always love a good radio play. I'm more of an auditory learner.
I am not an auditory learner, but I like being read to.
But yeah, I always love someone telling me a story. It feels more, even though I'm not interacting with it, it feels more interactive because I'm not as closed in.
Yeah.
Although, well, yeah, maybe I am because I put my headphones on and so no one will talk to me because I'm listening. And I make it very clear when someone interrupts, excuse me, give me a moment to pause.
It wasn't this
I am
book.
really I'm really dramatic about that too, to make it very clear you're interrupting me.
It wasn't this book. I was listening to something else this month, but I got to take the train from San Diego to Ventura, and I sat next to this very nice man who was getting off in Moore Park. I'm like, oh, why not LA or Santa Ana? But thankfully a seat opened up for him, so he moved away from me. He's like, I'm sorry, I'd like a window seat. Oh, no problem, sir. Anyway, he kept talking, even though I had earphones in. I had my knitting.
I would have ignored him. That's funny.
Yeah, it didn't work for me. I should have been more harumphy. Maybe it would have worked.
Well, thank you both. This was a much more emotional book than when I picked it. I just knew I liked the author. I didn't know as much about it, and I certainly did because I picked this months ago, waiting for my turn, and I had it wouldn't have been as scary if real life wasn't kind of scary right now.
As I was driving, listening to this, I caught the flag that's flying upside down off the 101 for the first time, indicating that our country's currently in distress. But I don't think we agree on why it's in distress if you're going to fly that flag upside down.
No.
I did want to get on a soapbox for a second.
Yes.
And say that, like I said at the beginning, you think this is not something that you could see happening in the near future, right? But we have the likely candidate for the Republican nomination for the presidency saying things like how great they think the Chinese president is, or how much he respects the dictator of North Korea. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to think that totalitarian government is not going to happen in America, but we're a near coin flip away from that person becoming the president again.
Everyone who wants to be president wants a totalitarian regime, only they're on the opposite side. So if Newsom gets himself in there too, he has no respect for the rule of law just coming from the left. And then you have DeSantis, who is the other likely. Yeah. And he is burning books, essentially.
They're almost the same person.
Get on your... I want to get on your soapbox with you.
So my point is, it's easy to put your head in the sand, but the most important and effective thing we can do is to keep ourselves informed, which sucks. Yep. But you have to do it, and you have to vote, no matter what election it is, because it's easy to vote for the president and it's important and everybody knows that that's something important to do. But every single nomination, every single thing on your ballot, to research all of the people and to vote for all of the people in all of the positions, which is hard and a lot of work, but it is so
all politics
important.
Are local. All of the things that
all of frustrate us start. Yeah. It starts with the smaller, it's not always the big presidential one. Boards. Yeah. It starts with the school board. It
your
starts
judiciary,
with your
it's
local
all the
elections.
So keep yourself informed, vote for every single thing, and donate money if you can to whoever's campaign you think is important, and also to donate to campaigns and to parties early, because the earlier your money gets in there, the more effective it is. Yeah. If you wait to the last minute for the candidate that you're really excited about, who's like, hey, the election's next week, I really need some more money, your money is not going to be as effective. And it could be $1, it could be $5, but getting the money into any sort of candidate or party that you think is important as early as possible. And the number one thing is just to not look at these things and put them aside and assume that somebody else is going to do that work, because that's how bad things happen, right?
Yep.
That's all I wanted to say.
I fully agree.
Yep. That's a unanimous for us. We all stand together on that.
Even, we don't all match exactly on our politics. But,
no, but
I
the
agree
things
with
that are important.
Every bit of what you just said.
Yep. I always like to think about, like, we might not agree about the way to get to there, but we all agree that that's the place that we want to go, right? Yeah. So, anybody else read anything else this month?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I read something this month.
Oh, tell us, Katie. Tell us what you read.
I read a book called The Lost Apothecary. My phone is currently recording this podcast, so I can't look it up, but I'm pretty sure the author's name is Sarah Penner. You'd have to fact check me, but it's called The Lost Apothecary. I very much enjoyed it. I found it because Tamber was talking about a new release from this author that I almost chose for our book club today because it's my pick, but I think I'm going to save it. And it's like her second novel. So I was like, I should go back and reread her first novel. But it's about an apothecary in London in like olden times, and it's been a while since I've read it, but I did read it this month.
I just love how she with the apothecary in the name.
Yeah, she's sort of like doling out potions to kill bad men is essentially the idea. But it was really good. I very much enjoyed it, and I'm excited to read her second novel, which I think is called I can't remember what it is, but I might choose it for a book club in the future, or I might just read it myself because I enjoyed it. But that is
London Seance Society?
The London Seance Society. Yes, that's her second novel. I have not read that yet, but Lost Apothecary was very good.
You're reading, I think that's a good, like, always start with the authors first.
Yeah, because I was like, I want to read this. I'm like, no, I should read this other one first.
Yeah.
And I actually like read it like with my eyeballs and not my ears.
Nice. I have been escaping into Lois Penny's Inspector Gamache novels. I'm one a week. That is what I was listening to when the nice man kept talking to me on the train. They're wonderful. And I can't wait to start the next one. Except I try to keep my brain clear till we podcast. So I've read the first 4 and they're a delight, and I will probably keep repeating this report until I've read all 17 of them. They are delightful, and she's for like, because you can kind of think of those genre-based mysteries, romances, a little pulpy. She has a lot of really interesting insights into like people's lives and how we move.
I don't think pulpy is a bad thing.
No,
too.
I don't either.
Karin, what have you read?
Well, I read Leave the World Behind by I'm not sure how to pronounce the first name, Rumaan Alam, Rumaan. It's actually kind of in the same genre that we've been reading. So it was a heavy month, but really, really good. How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. Also excellent book. And I'm currently reading Where It Rains in Color by Denise Crittenden, which is sci-fi, but imagine that instead of having different countries, you have different people groups on different planets, and where the darker the color of the person is more highly prized, but for the same reason that it's all for beauty and aesthetics, but other people without the same beauty or aesthetics, or even with a whole lot of ableism happens because one whole planet in this thing goes missing and nobody even notices that they are drifting out of order. And in order to get back in, there's a whole lot of political nuances going on, but that is also really good. The evolution of the rare indigo is really, really fascinating. Cool. So those were the 3.
Well, it's my pick for our next book. I have chosen a book called The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which has been relatively popular. It was highly recommended at our favorite bookstore. It's by V.E. Schwab.
Love her.
So the Addie. Addie, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Okay, the little teaser says, France, 1714. In a moment of desperation, a young woman named Adeline meets a dangerous stranger and makes a terrible mistake. When she realizes the limitations of her Faustian bargain, being able to live forever, without being able to be remembered by anyone she sees, Addie chooses to flee her small village, as everything she once held dear is torn away. But there are still dreams to be had, and a life to live, and she's determined to find excitement and satisfaction in the wide beckoning world, even if she will be doomed to be forever alone. Or not quite alone, as every year on their anniversary, the alluring Luke comes to visit, checking to see if she's ready to give up her soul. Their darkly thrilling game stretches through the ages, seeing Addie witness history and fight to regain herself as she crosses oceans and tries on various lives. It will be 300 years before she stumbles into a hidden bookstore and discovers someone who can remember her name, and suddenly everything changes again.
I adore this author. I actually also just finished reading she has several series of stories. And I just finished reading, rereading one of her series, and nice. I love her.
Cool.
I'm excited.
Yeah, this just came out on paperback, and I was in Tambra Books, and I saw it, and I was like, that's a book from my list I want to read. So that's what we're reading next month. So
love it.
Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to check out our Instagram and our Patreon is the word if you want more from us, and our regular podcast episode will be out in a few weeks, and we'll talk to y'all then. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Strings Unraveled is a production of Strings and Things Studio with Anne Leckervin-Cazzoli, Kaity Von Rader-Fraker, and Karin Wilmoth. Recorded and edited by Kaity Von Rader-Fraker. Find us online at stringsandthingsstudio.com or on Facebook or Instagram at Strings and Things Studio. You can email us at stringsandthingsinfo@gmail.com.